is set. What a finish! Miraculous! Awesome. A new star is born!
Hi folks, Leigh Diffey with you to talk about the 2021 MotoGP season, which kicks off at the end of the month, March 28th in Qatar. And we are privileged to have 1993 500cc world champion Kevin Schwantz with us. We've managed to drag him away from his fishing rod and talk about bikes for a moment. Kevin, thanks for your time. Hey, I'm interested to know straight away, from a very personal thing for you, from a Suzuki point of view, to see Joan Mir win the World Championship last year, and many would say unexpectedly so. The gap between him and Kenny Roberts Jr. was 20 years. A further 7 years before that was you winning a world championship. There's only been 6 Suzuki world champions in the Premier class. So how kind of special from a personal point was that for you?
No, I mean, absolutely. It's as special as it can be when Suzuki's running at the front consistently enough to contend for a championship. And, you know, I think we all would have thought at the beginning of the season that it was Alex Rins that was going to be the guy, on the hot seat, possibly contending. And a first round crash and a hurt shoulder kind of hindered him all year. And Mir was there to pick up the pieces and score some decent points until he really got confident and comfortable. And, what a show he put on at the end. That last race wasn't a whole lot there at Portimao, but, I think by then the championship was clinched. And so the pressure was off. Maybe they dropped their guns a little bit and weren't quite ready for that. But it seems like in testing preseason, they haven't been the fastest, and that was kind of their tough spot last year was qualifying. They need to have that one lap speed to start better. But, to see Suzuki win a world championship again, it had been a long time. It looked like they had a bike that was capable of it early in the season. And, all the cards just fell right, and Mir picked up that championship.
MotoGP, in many ways, very similar to Formula One and NASCAR and IndyCar. It draws people in to be lifers, right? Are there any people that were on your team or in and around that Lucky Strike Suzuki team back in the day that are still in this MotoGP paddock, to your knowledge?
Not that I know of. Well, in the paddock for sure. There's still plenty of people, but not necessarily at Suzuki. I think some of my Suzuki guys probably made it through the Roberts Championship, but it wasn't long after that there was a big changeover, and I think a bunch of guys went different places. But yeah, there's still, I don't know, half a dozen guys in the paddock that were around when I was racing.
Well, one guy who's not going to be in that MotoGP paddock within the Suzuki team and leading the Suzuki team is a guy who you and I have known for a long time. He's a Superman. Davide Brivio has gone on to be the racing director at the Alpine Formula One team. Huge accomplishment for him personally and professionally. But what kind of a hole is that going to leave in the MotoGP paddock, especially for the reigning world champions?
Well, I mean, from entertainment side of things, the Suzuki hospitality was always the place to be. The Brivios knew how to have and give hospitality. That's for sure. But they came in, they stepped into a completely new team and brought it to championship level. And to be able to walk away from it, obviously Davide has something else on his plate. And I saw the other day Alonso crashed his bicycle and it's hurt pretty bad. So maybe not start off to the season like he hoped for, but the Brivios, best of luck to them both. I think Sahara-san, who's the one in charge now, him and Ken Kawauchi, I think his last name is, they should be able to, having seen what's happened over the past 4 or 5 years, I think they can grab it by the scruff of the neck and kind of keep things in line. At least I hope they can. All
right, so big news today. And that is that Marc Marquez got back on the bike at Circuit de Barcelona, Catalunya. It's something we've all been waiting for. Many feel maybe he came back prematurely last year and then furthered that injury. I think the surgery counts up to 3 now. What's your general take on Marquez?
Fortunately, I've never broken that bone. Broken a lot of other ones, but not that specific.
I was going to say you've broken just about every other one.
And it's the few people that I know that have broken them, it's been a real tough comeback. But hearing that Mark was back on the bike, at least a bike riding around a racetrack, that's great news. I think he him not being there allowed the Grand Prix race, allowed MotoGP to be a much more open sport last year. There was opportunities for everybody to win. If he can come back to the level that he was competing at when he got hurt, he could make it somewhat monotonous again. But I think it's going to be a struggle for him. But if anybody has the ability to do it, I think it's Marc Marquez.
Do you think we could use the analogy almost like a Tiger Woods type analogy? Where Tiger suffered numerous injuries and had time away, but then came back to win the Masters again. And I think, do you think that the others, the rest of the MotoGP field, have their confidence so high now that they feel they could take a shot at him when he comes back if he's not 100% healthy?
No, absolutely, and so many different guys, nine different winners of Grand Prix last year. Absolutely, everybody's walking around with their shoulders back and their chest puffed out. Until Mark gets back on a bike, nobody knows. But hopefully he gets back to fitness and we get to see him back on his Repsol Honda competing at a top level again.
It was a rough, in addition to the Marquez injury, it was a pretty rough start to the season, first half of the season for sure, for Repsol Honda. And, you and I chatted privately that it was just so unusual to see Repsol Hondas down the back. Mick Doohan, 5-time world champion and a friend of ours, he was just blown away. It hurt him personally to see the team struggling so badly. But then Alex Marquez really turned things around in the second half of the season, kind of almost feel sorry for him that he's not part of that factory team anymore, and he had a rough few days of testing as well. What do you think of little bro?
I think he did a great job, like you said. I think Alex showed at the end of the season that he was really coming to grips with that motorcycle, and it's not been that great season off testing of preseason testing for him, but hopefully he can get his confidence back. A couple of little silly couple of crashes, not a silly one that actually banged him up.
What do you make of his teammate Taka Nakagami? I was pleasantly surprised by him last year.
Nakagami is, he goes about things his own way. He's a great person to be around. I mean, nicest guy you've ever met when you talk to him. But on the motorcycle, he's a fierce competitor. And I think he just needs the opportunity to do more laps, get more time on that motorcycle, and then get some more confidence under his belt. And he could be a factor to win a race.
Well, somebody who is bursting to win a race, he's only won one in his MotoGP career in the Premier class, is Jack Miller. Phenomenal effort on the Works Ducati in testing over the combined 5 days. Had the quickest time. You talk about rolling your shoulders back and sticking your chest out. I think Jack Miller's walking around like he's never walked around before. Is he the favourite for this year, in your opinion?
Jack always walks around with his chest puffed out. And that's sort of one of the things that I think everybody loves about him. I mean, he feels like he has a chance to win every race that he gets to the starting line on. And that's the confidence you got to have. And now having a factory bike, fastest lap ever around, not fastest lap ever, but was the fastest in testing, not quite as fast as Marquez has been around. Absolutely. I mean, you got to look at testing and say the guys who are fastest are the guys that are the favorites. So Jack's top of the heap, that's for sure.
Been a long time too. Obviously, only the one world championship for Ducati in MotoGP history, and that was Casey Stoner. Now, 14 years ago, wow. They're hanging out. They're dying, especially after getting so close, so many times.
It's been a long time. Yeah, they've had Dovey, and he was there, and he was consistent and ran at the front, but never could quite put that championship or take that championship to Bologna for them. But Ducati, as we've seen, since they got into Grand Prix racing, they're there, and they're there to be a competitor. They're not just there to fill the field.
What do you think? What we've already discussed 9 winners last year. I mean, from an entertainment perspective, I couldn't wait for the next race to come about. It was phenomenal. Champions like yourself are often accused of having the standpoint of, it was always faster and tougher and better back in my day. But I know that you were blown away by the level of competition last year, right?
No, absolutely. There was, back in the day, there were maybe a little bit more difficult bikes to ride. But the level of competition, I mean, the competitiveness all the way through the fields, any of those 22, 24 bikes out there really do stand a chance of being able to win a Grand Prix. And last year we saw, a bunch of first timers get up there and win races. Probably a field as competitive as it's ever been. And to me, to look at it from the perspective of qualifying, I mean, second and a half, maybe top to bottom. I mean, longer track, maybe a little bit more, something more technical, maybe just a bit longer. But I mean, second and a half covered the front 2 rows back in the day. So, you know, the opportunity to you've got to qualify well. You can't say, you know, I'm going to be good in the race. I can start the 3rd row because I can get past those guys, no problem. You've got to start at the front to race at the front to be able to win.
I've got quite the laundry list here of things to talk about. I want to break away from the top class just for a moment and talk about, and there's no one better than for you to talk about what it's like making the leap of faith, going across the pond, racing in Europe, and then obviously you winning a world championship. But it's that I think we're seeing a little bit of a resurgence right now, and it's a really happy time for American 2-wheel fans, because you got Joe Roberts stepping up to a championship winning team in Moto2. Cameron Beaubier, the 5-time Moto America Superbike champion, is going over to the American racing team to fill Joe Roberts' seat. You got Garrett Gerloff in World Superbikes doing great things. This is a pretty sweet time, right?
You know, it really is. And I've said all along that I think the talent in America is the same as it was when Wayne Rainey and I raced in America. It's still there, but without factory involvement in the series in America, there's not that avenue to get riders to Europe. You know, now some teams are starting to take chances on Americans, realizing that, hey, you know, get those kids over here, get them on a competitive bike, give them a fair shake, not just a race or two, and not at tracks they've never seen, with something, you know, the opportunity to test and spend some time on the bike. You know, we're still, the Americans are just as fast as anybody. And it's great to see Cameron and then Joe over there. Cameron, having ridden Grand Prix bikes earlier, back when the 125s were 2-strokes, he had the misfortune of being Marc Marquez's teammate their first year in Grand Prix. So would have been hard to shine against that teammate. But, you know, hopefully Cameron gets some confidence back and we can get to see the stars and stripes back on the podium, or maybe even at the top of it. Garrett Gerloff, once again, what a great job he's done in World Superbike, and hope to see him at the front of that too.
John Hopkins resumes his role as a mentor and a coach, and will be there for Cameron Beaubier within the American racing team. I can't remember. That's why I'm asking. Did you have anybody like that to lean on? I mean, I think that's a huge resource.
Yeah, not really. I mean, it was the guys in the garage most of the time. So my mechanics, my engineers. I had my parents around, but you know, my dad and mom just kind of stood back and watched and saw how things happened. Maybe they'd go get my helmets for me and bring me my stuff, but I never had a minder to help me, or a coach of any kind. So, but it's something that, not to say that I couldn't have used it. Yeah, I mean, somebody to slap me around after I made some of those mistakes, instead of everybody just going, well, we'll get them next time.
Yeah,
you know, would have helped. Somebody to stand on the edge of the track and watch, like Kenny Roberts did. I mean, almost every practice of my career, I can remember going out somewhere around the track. You'd see Kenny standing there watching, you know, and he was typically giving Wayne some input on something I might be doing different, shifting a gear, not shifting a gear, tighter line, wider line, whatever it might be. Having a second set of eyes out there, because you get to it as a rider, you get to a track and it's maybe a track you like, bang, you get out there and everything just flows immediately. You go back to a track that you had a bad result the year before, and you're like, okay, I got to try harder, I got to go fast from the very beginning, and you end up chasing your tail the whole weekend. You know, you just get so focused on trying to do one thing, and to have somebody else there to give you some advice and help you would have been a great advantage.
Well, you mentioned going back to tracks that you did well at or didn't do well at. Speaking of tracks, so at the moment there's 19 confirmed rounds with the MotoGP World Championship in 2021. 2 TBDs, that's Argentina, and unfortunately here in the States, it's Circuit of the Americas. So knock on wood, fingers crossed that those rounds will happen and we'll see MotoGP bikes back here in the USA. But really exciting. I think it's really interesting because I've heard some old friends of ours talk about the golden years in Finland. There will be a MotoGP in Finland for the first time in 1981. Hey, I've got a little statistical note for you. In 1981, that the last time that MotoGP or the Premier Class raced in Finland, fellow Suzuki world champion Marco Lucinelli won the race. Kenny Roberts, you just mentioned, was in it. Our old dear friend, 2-time Suzuki world champion Barry Sheene, unfortunately retired. And so too did Valentino Rossi's dad, Graziano Rossi. He was in the race, and Vali was only 2 years old. So I think there's a lot of excitement about going back to Finland.
Still had a year left in high school, but I definitely wasn't I wasn't 2 years old. Finland's, I've never got to race there. I've heard a lot about the Grand Prix, a lot about the people. What a fun event it used to be to get to go to. I'm looking forward to hearing reports as to what it was like.
I mean, do you have the same feeling? Like, I mean, the world is getting healthier and safer step by step. The United States numbers are looking better and better. Are we going to have, I mean, and I know you're not speaking from a medical standpoint, but does it feel to you like we'll have somewhat of a normal season?
It sure seems like it. So many states opening up, taking masks off, restaurants to full capacity, sporting venues. I think, this year, fortunately for us, I've got to watch you from Texas now 4 times, and you got 2 more dates coming up.
Yeah.
The state with the most supercrosses, and normally that's been California by a big margin. So, hopefully sporting events start to get bigger and bigger. What did I watch? I watched the Players Championship. I watched some golf last weekend, and they had
there were galleries,
quite a few people there, and it was awesome. Yeah. And the players talked about, okay, I can still play my game, but to hear the crowd roar when I make a putt, it just makes such a difference. And it's got to be the same in motorcycle racing. So hopefully we get to see MotoGP back at COTA. I'd love to have an end of the season finale here.
That'd be pretty cool, wouldn't it? For those of you listening and watching who don't know, the man we're talking to, 1993 500cc world champ Kevin Schwantz, actually had a major hand in the track design of Circuit of the Americas. Let's keep going, Kevin, before we run out of time. Valentino Rossi, we were just talking about his dad. Vali starts his 26th season in the World Championship paddock. Unbelievable. He is ageless. He moves from the factory Yamaha team to the Petronas SRT factory supported team. He's described the environment in there as beautiful, loves all the personnel, the new crew. He's feeling really good. He'll be alongside Franco Morbidelli, who won several times last year on an older version of the bike. What do you see Valentino doing this year?
It's 26 years in the paddock, but it's 20 years in the premier class, isn't it? 20 or 21? That's absolutely amazing. And, I think Valley's still got some results left in him. I see him fighting for the podium quite a few times this year. And, if the guys don't watch it, he's going to be there to win some races. He's back. He's in a garage. He's with Morbidelli. He and Morbidelli's are almost like brothers. They really get along well. And then I think the Petronas team's really going to benefit from those two guys being such good buds. And, I think from just a storyline, it'd be great to see Valley back at the front and being competitive. As tough as it's got to be at that age.
So many people are hanging out to see him just win. Just one more would be great. One more would be great. Let's stay on the Yamaha train for a second, because talking about the seat swapping, Valentino going out of the factory team, Fabio Quartararo, who dominated the early rounds of last year's championship, he goes to the factory team alongside Maverick Viñales. I don't know, these two guys, I get so excited to watch them ride, but then they seem to not deliver when you expect or want them to deliver. There's been a lot made about the Yamaha's 2019 chassis, the 2020 chassis, and now the 21 chassis. They're feeling a little bit more optimistic about it. I mean, these two guys are so good, Quartararo and Viñales. They should be out there running 1-2, don't you think?
Absolutely. And I think, I forget which race it was, whether it was the last round in Porto Maya or somewhere, where both factory bikes and Quartararo were 13th, 14th, and 15th. It was like I've never seen that in my life. Have I ever seen factory Yamahas run that far back? So I'm sure the factory's done a lot of hard work over the winter, trying to get engine specs back to where they need to be, trying to get reliability back. And as far as the rider lineup goes, I mean, they've got as strong a rider lineup as anybody. Quartararo started the season last year, bang, bang, couple of big wins. And I thought, he's going to make it boring now that Mark's not there. But, just being young and a little bit inexperienced, he had a couple of rounds where he just, mistake after mistake after mistake. So hopefully he's got some maturity under his belt. Viñales, we know, of course, is a race winner on the right bike. He's one of those guys that seems like he really needs to have the bike right there for him to even be close to competitive. But when it's right, everybody better watch out. You go to the Petronas team and with Rossi and Morbidelli, I think Morbidelli showed us last year he's a threat to win the championship. He'll be there every weekend. I think Valentino is going to be motivated a lot by what Frankie's doing on that motorcycle, and hopefully Valentino can find some good results too.
Looking forward to seeing there's several good rookies jumping up to the Premier class, led by Enea Bastianini, the Moto2 world champion. It doesn't matter where you look. There's so much to talk about in this year's MotoGP World Championship. But I want to end this, mate, by giving the listeners and the viewers something. Kevin Schwantz said this. So what is this? What should we look forward to this year, in your opinion? What's the one key takeaway?
Well, my biggest take on this season is watching, like you said, Bastianini, Marini, and Jorge Martin. 3 kids that have all come from the smaller ranks up and are now in the premier class, to see what those guys can do. And I guess for me the big question is, how good is that Yamaha going to be as a race bike? I mean, is it as good as it's been showing testing? And if it is, everybody's got their work cut out. Of course, hope my Suzuki can be back up front again.
Boy, they sure finished strong last year. Like you said, qualifying wasn't their strong suit, but boy, did both of them finish so strong in the races. And that's what made a lot of the Grand Prix so gripping, because you had to stay to the end. There were very few runaways, and that's what made that 2020 season. And
they were able to come from mid pack in the race, qualify further back and able to make passes, which you don't see a lot these days in MotoGP. So, that just tells you that bike is a pretty good race bike. It may not have that one lap speed in it, but a couple of really good young riders on it. Hopefully they can get that thing back in the front.
Well, it's not often that we have MotoGP legends here on NBC Sports. So, Kevin Schwantz, thanks for your time. It's been a thrill. And, hey, let's get this season started.
Absolutely, Lee. And just to let you know, the fishing rods aren't far away. See them over there in the corner?
Very good. Thanks so much.